Hello and welcome to the West Asia Post. I'm your host Ghadi Francis, coming to you from the heart of Beirut, Lebanon. And this is our weekly show from this region. This week we have a special episode of the West Asia Post. We bring you a recap of this year. 2023 was a year of turns and turmoil for this region. It started with a deadly earthquake, followed by dim hopes of regional stability. Things soon took turn to the worse as Israel and Gaza got up to their deadliest face-off in decades. Here's our special rewind of 2023, the changing face of West Asia. '23 started on a rather somber note for West Asia. One of the deadliest of natural disasters hit both Syria and Turkey. A 7.8 magnitude earthquake hit both countries and more than 50,000 people died. WION was there on the ground. We brought you reports of death and destruction as it happened. In our first recap report, we bring you the story of the horror as it unfolded.
The morning of February 6th, thousands of sleeping Turks and Syrians woke up in panic as a 7.8 magnitude earthquake rattled the two countries. With just their clothes on their backs, people ran out of their homes, leaving everything behind. But for some, it was already too late. The earthquake was epicentered in a quiet town in the south of Turkey. Kahramanmaraş is on the eastern fault line. But the line was not on any watch list, nor did it show any major tectonic activity till the 6th of February. The shock disaster left everyone unprepared. The damage was widespread. Homes, schools and hospitals, every standing structure was toppled. Entire cities and villages were left in ruins. More than 50,000 people were killed. Millions were homeless in cities in Turkey and Syria. The aftershocks proved equally lethal as multi-storied buildings collapsed like dominoes. In the quake-devastated town of Jandaris in northern Syria, a man looks in shock at a pile of rubble where his family once lived. 12 of his family members were killed.
We are broken. We are completely broken. No father, no mother.
In the aftermath of the deadly quake, Team WION visited Syria. We brought you reports from the country's worst-hit regions. Syria's rescue operations were hit by a spate of Western sanctions. It was not until weeks after the disaster that a temporary pause in US-imposed curbs allowed much-needed relief into the country.
In mere seconds, memories, 10 families' homes brought down. This area here is called Ustan Qasr in Aleppo. It used to be a borderline between the ISIS-controlled area and the Syrian government area. This is one of the worst hit parts of Aleppo. 6 meters underground, the river took one of the buildings. I'm standing here with Ibrahim Uthman, who lost part of his family and was able to save other parts with his own bare hands. His story is heartbreaking and heart-wrenching. These are the toys of his gone child.
While the war-ravaged Syria was at a disadvantage in responding to the disaster, The earthquake exposed an inadequate Turkish response system. Wails soon turned into anger. People slammed the Erdogan administration for the absence of state help in their weeks-long futile search and rescue operations.
Look at the situation here. Where is the state? Where are they? I can't get my brother back from the ruins. I can't get my nephew back. Look around here. There is no state official here, for God's sake. For 2 days we haven't seen the state around here. They did not bring a single brick. Not one single brick. Children are freezing from the cold.
Ever since the earthquake, international aid worth millions of dollars arrived in Turkey. But the rescue and rebuilding efforts proved insufficient and slow in taking help to the disaster-hit areas. Rebuilding proved to be a big challenge for an already stretched Turkish economy. Turkey needed over $100 billion in funds to rehabilitate its displaced citizens. People were losing faith in Erdogan when the Turkish strongman admitted the problems. But the seasoned politician lost no time turning the crisis into opportunity. Amid reports he might lose the upcoming polls, Erdogan emerged victorious once again. In Syria, fortune smiled on President Bashar al-Assad as well. Embraced by Arab leaders after the earthquake, Syria re-entered the Arab League after a decade of animosity. The disaster was a pivotal moment for everyone. For the people, it brought grief and sorrow. For the leaders, it was a consolidation of support in the wake of national calamity.
2023 saw moments of hope and diplomatic feats, a flurry of pacts signed. Saudi Arabia and Iran were reconciled in an unprecedented truce brokered by China. Syria was welcomed back to the Arab fold. Accords signed, relations mended, all brought hopes of stability to a region marred by decades of conflict. Here's a report.
For decades, the headlines on West Asia were all about its conflicts, rivalries, and proxy wars. The rest of the world kept out the West Asian countries from their blocs and snapped ties with them up until 2023, when the cold reality of the need for stability raised new prospects for peace. Riven by animosities, the region was willing to mend its relations. Attempts were made to reconcile for a better tomorrow. For the region and its regimes, the biggest and most unexpected of these big diplomatic thaws involved Saudi Arabia and Iran. Tensions between the Sunni powerhouse Saudi Arabia and Shia-majority Iran dominated the region for decades. The two countries were locked in an intense rivalry that played out through proxy conflicts. The final nail in the coffin came in 2016 when Saudi Arabia executed prominent Shia cleric Nimr al-Nimr. Iran was outraged. Angry protesters burnt down the Saudi embassy in Tehran. They stormed all its diplomatic posts in Iran. The Saudi kingdom retaliated by breaking its ties with Iran and stepping up hostilities. However, on the 10th of March 2023, there was a surprise announcement. Saudi and Iran said they were stepping back from conflict. It was a diplomatic feat achieved by China. Beijing hailed the truce as a victory for dialogue. World leaders welcomed it as a turning point for West Asia. Keen on stabilizing the region and its neighborhood, Saudi Arabia next warmed up to Iran's ally, Syria. Rumors of a Saudi rapprochement with Syria have been talked about since 2018. That was the year the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain restored ties with Damascus. But for 5 years, nothing concrete happened until Russia brokered a deal. Soon Syria was cozying up with the same leaders who shunned it a decade ago. Until January, no one would have talked of Syria returning to the Arab fold, let alone Saudi Arabia spearheading the efforts. In April, Saudi and Omani delegations reached Sana'a, the Yemeni capital under Houthi control. The aim was to end years of war in the dragged-out conflict. Days later, Saudi and Yemen saw a major prisoner swap. In 3 days, around 900 prisoners were freed. Officials kept meeting for months later, raising hopes for peace in Yemen. The troop had two big names plastered all over it: Russia and China, the emerging two big players in West Asia. Both were looking to widen their international role. But unlike Uncle Sam, for years the US involved itself directly in the power play of West Asia. Moscow and Beijing, however, do not wish to be party to the regional conflicts. They want to gain allies, the ground for strategic and economic cooperation. The peace moves in West Asia took Washington by surprise. The US was no more the decision maker, but instead it was relegated to an observer. What followed was the news of talks between US, Saudi Arabia and Israel. There were also reports of Jeddah formalizing ties with Israel. But things soon took a turn for the worse. The Hamas attacked Israel on the 7th of October. The war it triggered in Gaza did not only halt the Saudi-Israel talks, but also put the much-praised Abraham Accords at stake. And that is where the world stood at the end of 2023.
War. October 7 changed the face of West Asia. The attack started the deadliest of wars between Gaza and Israel. We are speaking about a war that is still raging right now, and there are fears of it becoming a regional spillover, of West Asia's war becoming a wider conflict. Take a look.
The 7th of October 2023 changed the face of West Asia. Hamas militants launched a heinous attack on Israel. It was the worst terror attack the Jewish country had seen since its formation. Over 1,139 people were killed and many more injured. For many elderly Israelis, the attack rekindled memories of a horrific past. The attack began with armed men from breaking through the militarized border. In the hours that followed, thousands of rockets flew from Gaza. On the ground, the rampaging Hamas militants killed everyone in sight. In the streets, the houses, communities, and even a rave fest. Stunned and angered by the attack, Israel declared war. It pledged to eliminate every Hamas member for attacking its territory.
אזרחי ישראל, אנחנו במלחמה. לא במבצע, לא בסבבים, במלחמה.
The Israeli military stormed Gaza with planes firing missiles from the sky, bombing everything: houses, hospitals, and schools. In the days to come, Israel told 1 million-odd residents of northern Gaza to immediately relocate. It intensified its attacks in the region. IDF soldiers took over the city. As the civilian population of Gaza paid the price for the unexpected war.
The whole square was completely destroyed. Nothing but destruction in entire neighborhoods of innocent people. What else can be done? And despite all of this, we will remain steadfast.
With each passing day, the battles piled on more destruction. Palestinians said 20,000 Gazans have been killed since the 7th of October. 2 million people were displaced. The already cramped territory now mirrors a dystopian horror film, with deaths on every street and a funeral every day. Gaza is slowly losing pace to bury its dead. While the Israeli assault continued, the world held protests for the Palestinian people. From New York to Cairo, from Beirut to Berlin, from Islamabad to Amsterdam, people were out on the streets calling for a ceasefire. There was anger in Israel as well. Families of the people taken hostage by Hamas militants called on the Netanyahu government to get them back. Many called for a ceasefire as well. Behind the scenes, Egypt and Qatar mediated with Hamas, Israel and the United States. The weeks-long negotiations finally brought results. A 7-day ceasefire was called in Gaza. Precious days of respite that allowed hundreds of aid trucks to enter Gaza as the guns fell silent. The people in the besieged strip counted the dead and reunited with those alive. The truce also included a prisoner swap. Hamas militants had abducted over 240 people when they unleashed their terror on Israel. Most of the hostages were held by the Hamas group. Some were in the captivity of other Palestinian factions. Over the 7 days of truce, Hamas released 110 hostages. They included Israelis and foreign nationals. Those freed were mostly women, children and the elderly. Israel also freed 240 Palestinians held in its jails. The truce ended on the 1st of December, and with that, Israeli forces trained their guns back on Gaza with greater force. 8 trucks were stuck at the Rafah border for days. On the strip, clean water and power became scarce. Fuel supplies were exhausted, forcing many hospitals and medical centers to stop operations. Violence broke out in the West Bank as well. Settler attacks increased, even as the Israeli forces intensified their crackdown on the Palestinian territory. Over 300 Palestinians were reportedly killed in the West Bank since the war. In the last 2 months, world bodies gathered multiple times to find a way out of the disastrous conflict. From the Arab League to the United Nations, all have called for a ceasefire. Amid the hopes for another truce, Hamas and Israel have made their terms clear. The Palestinian group will not release more hostages till the missiles stop hitting Gaza. Israel is, however, adamant on eliminating the last of the Hamas militants from the Gaza Strip. While the leaders have refused to budge, for the 2 million people, every day has become D-Day, facing death either by the bombs or hunger. Diseases are fast spreading in Gaza. Medicines are scarce. So are the hopes of relief. Tragedy is not unknown to Gazans. It has been a constant companion through their history. The present and the near future look no different. Bureau Report WION, World is One.
Strategy and economy, from controlling oil prices to hosting major climate summits, West Asia was able to achieve major feats in spite of domestic troubles. In the next report, we show you how West Asian nations further cemented their role as strategic and economic decision makers. Take a look.
Connecting the global north and the global south, West Asia for centuries has played a key role in geopolitical strategy and the world economy. This resource-rich region sits at the center of the world map. From ancient trade routes to modern-day corridors, the region has figured in all key plans and policies. In every era, 2023 was no different. In September this year, on the sidelines of the New Delhi summit, G20 member nations made a big announcement by unveiling the India-Middle East to Europe Economic Corridor. Acronymed the IMEC, the corridor is by far the most ambitious multinational, multi-regional, geo-economic and geostrategic project. Its signatories are India, the UAE, Saudi Arabia, the European Union, France, Italy, Germany and the United States. The rail and road corridor counters China's Belt and Road Initiative that is already spread across the region. But while IMEC offers better economic prospects for all parties, it provides West Asia better connectivity and more opportunities. It also comes with risks attached. West Asia has seen plenty of big-ticket projects and a flurry of deals fizzle out faster than expected. The viability of IMEC also depends on regional stability. The Hamas attacks on October 7 and the Israeli assault on Gaza are only the latest challenges to it. Even otherwise, key talks necessary between Tel Aviv and Riyadh have been paused for a while now. Equally, UAE and Israel have to put their economic relations on sounder footing. However, the IMEC parties say the Israel-Gaza war has not impacted the project at all. Coming to West Asia and its strategic importance, the other big name is the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries, also known as OPEC. The 13-member grouping includes all major oil-exporting nations of West Asia and Africa. Through the years, it has determined fuel prices worldwide. The OPEC grouping sells nearly 30% of the world's crude. Saudi Arabia is its biggest supplier. This year, the bloc announced multiple production cuts for a global market affected by 2 active wars. But despite slashing oil production for months on end and announcing new cuts in late November, the extended group is struggling to boost flagging prices. It also faces pressure on multiple fronts. The US is fiercely competing with it on crude production. There's also a looming transition away from fossil fuels, not to mention clashes among the members themselves.
In the middle of politics and conflicts, the blooming societies of West Asia saw some different defining moments in terms of society and culture. From Saudi Arabia to Iran, the region and the people of the region witnessed many important moments, and we in the West Asia Post headlined most of them. In our final report for today, we bring you the moments of society and culture defining West Asia. Take a look. This brings our special episode to an end. I will see you next year, always with a fresh lineup of all things new, developments and ground reports from the most volatile region in the world. I'm Ghadi Francis signing off from Beirut, wishing you a better year ahead. For more global news, always keep on watching WION. World is One.
High-class
Israel woke up to a barrage of thousands of rockets fired from the Gaza Strip.
אזרחי ישראל, אנחנו במלחמה.
Hostilities have broken out between Israel